Welcome back, everyone, to It Tastes Like Burning. I'm Matt.
I'm Jesse.
Today we've got a real special critter for you. We managed to find two things that were making a bunch of noise behind a gas station. Turned out it was two of our members, Isaac and Boyd. And what we're going to be talking about today is young guys on a department, young gals on a department, and they're trying to make that quantum leap of being young men, women, starting on an organization, and they're going to be going forth and stomping out a career in this.
Yeah, I've seen it lots, dozens of them, maybe multiple dozens of younger guys wanting to make that leap from the volunteer to the paid side. Coming from a combination department, it was pretty common. And what I've seen here, it looks pretty common. So we'll have a good talk with them. We'll figure out where their minds are at and give them a little bit of our guidance and advice, and hopefully they make it in this world.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I know for our organization itself, it's been, I've referenced this previously in other podcasts where we're kind of like a AAA farm team for our big cities. We have a lot of people that come here and ultimately make a career out of it. And then from there, they bounce off and go forth and conquer. So just kind of make the transition nice and easy. We'll start with Boyd.
Well, before we do that, Matt, what'd you do this weekend?
That's a good question. So I managed to OD on some pecan pie, and I actually astro projected myself to the JFK assassination, and it is still unsolved.
Yeah, no.
How about yourself?
Nothing particular. Slept and took a nap.
Well, that's not nearly as interesting as ODing on pecan pie.
Yeah, no, I can't even hold a candle to that. And
I don't know if I'd actually recommend doing that again, but it was rough.
Yeah, the glucometer reads H.
Yeah. What about you, Boyd? What'd you do this weekend?
Just a bunch of clinicals trying to catch up. Like y'all said, trying to make that next jump.
Clinicals for what?
Paramedic school.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
You regretting that decision yet?
Always and forever. Dreams do turn into nightmares.
How about you, Isaac? What'd you do this weekend?
Mixed in between working EMS on the side and filling out surrounding county applications for career departments.
EMS or fire?
Fire departments.
Okay.
Trying to make that leap from EMS to working primarily fire. I take that back. It'd actually be EMS with the title of fire department.
Yeah, that's an EMS department with fire capabilities. Real familiar with that concept. I know a lot about that. So you guys both that's what you want to do. That's where you want to be, and you're both young guys, early 20s. Let's just say that's the age bracket you're in, and looking to make that what you do. So up until this point, what have you done to prepare yourself, Isaac?
Well, mixed in with being on the volunteer level, doing all the trainings for over 4 years, getting a good insight on just how it would be career-wise. A lot of our training is similar to what a career department would do on a daily basis. The only thing I don't really have is kind of the day-to-day chores as truck checks, daily, checking your saws. As we do check the saws, it's a different time schedule.
Yeah, we don't do it maybe as often, but we're still doing it. Realize that a lot of that daily check is there more for shift cohesion and some of that stuff than it is for that stuff doesn't necessarily need to be checked every day. But
Well, a lot of it, as far as I'm concerned, is just busy work.
yeah, it's to get them out of the day room and doing something more than it is.
Yeah, that's another thing, kind of being more glued to your little station for 24 or 48 hours rather than you can come and go as you please. Just kind of station life, adaptability, but...
I mean, we can achieve that here for you. We just put you in the room and lock it for about 48 hours and then let you out. It's not a problem.
Builds character.
Yeah, it builds character.
It's good for you.
Shove a hamburger under the door. That's it. What have you been doing, Boyd, to up until this point to prepare yourself?
So from my standpoint, it's been a little different than some people take in their paths, which is kind of typically in their later 20s. For me, I went through the EMT class at my high school. And then technically, before I was even done with that, I enrolled into paramedic school, which earlier I was joking about it, but I mean, it truly is. It does put you at a huge advantage, and it is fun. It is fun to do it. But that's primarily what I've been doing, which is kind of different for being so young and going straight into paramedic school, not even graduating high school yet. So that's kind of primarily what I've been aiming to do is get.
You said it was an advantage. What's the advantage of going literally straight from EMT, not even taking the NREMT and already being enrolled in a paramedic program? What's the advantage?
So kind of what I meant by advantage is just being so young with your paramedic and having time to still get all of your other certs that you want to get. With that being said, it does offer a disadvantage because being so young, you don't have the life experience yet, especially for being a paramedic. But that was kind of what I was aiming more of it at. So that's kind of the standpoint that I've been aimed to take down my career path, is to get that out of the way and then focus on advancing in my fire academy. And
yeah, to kind of put everything into context, when Boyd was doing this, let's be honest, he's a young man. He's just literally not even graduated high school yet, and he's going into a paramedic program. And even to this day, I still have problems with it, because at the end of the day, the paramedic is the one that's in charge on the box. And not every single call you go to is, I can't poop, and helping an old man into bed. And there's some truly incredibly staggering calls that the theoretical 18, 19-year-old is going to end up on. And there's not going to be a supervisor there, and it's always going to be level 0. There's going to be no other resources coming in to help them with this call. And they stumble into truly staggering, sexual assault call, murders, on. And it's not a challenge to the young man or woman that's in that position. I'm not challenging their education. What I'm challenging is their life experience and being able to actually be qualified to handle that event, particularly because chances are it's going to be the first time they've ever encountered that. And it's just, to this day, I have a problem with it. And it's just some of that stuff you don't get experience with. And very simply, they could be 40 years old and never encountered that until the first time they encounter it. And there's no way to prepare them for it, but at least they have 20 years of being an adult versus 2 years of being an adult. Yeah, to this day, I still have a problem with that program. From a practical point of view, it makes 10 times more sense to me to at least become an EMT, get your chops cut, God forbid, for at least a month, if not a year, to then start that paramedic. Now, that doesn't work for your career. From a career point of view, it makes perfect sense. Get the EMT done in high school, segue straight out of it, graduate, take the NREMT class, and in your particular case, you were already doing paramedic classes. So, you were actually quite a ways into your paramedic before you even took the EMT. From a career point of view, it makes perfect sense because you're going to go straight from high school. You've already had your EMT. The paramedic takes a year. Get the paramedic done, and you're able to rebound off of that and go straight into applying at any department that you choose, because frankly, they don't really care right now if you have your TCFP cert in the state. They care more about having the EMT.
That's a good reason why a lot of civil service departments give bonus points for military. that falls right into that whole deal of life experience. They're hoping and knowing that if you've had that prior service, there's at least 3 or 4 or 5 years of high stress life experience and some training that they're going to weigh that more than a guy that doesn't have that. And that's what that bonus point system is in the civil service. It's just a way to advance those guys that should be a little bit better at decision making and some of that stuff that, Boyd and Isaac don't have necessarily those life skills to get them there. That's one of those ace in the hole deals that some of those guys that do their little military service first and then come back into their mid-20s and late 20s, and you mentioned being younger than those guys in their late 20s, they have that advantage that you don't have. So,
Right.
So, Boyd, that's a quick snapshot of your current career in education. What about you, Isaac? Where'd you start with this, and kind of like where are you trying to rebound and bounce into?
Well, me and Boyd kind of took 2 different routes, as he went straight in a EMT paramedic. I decided to go straight EMT, but got a full-time job in the Metroplex in a busy EMS system, running all over the Metroplex, learning the city, running some interesting calls, just getting more of experience before I spring into medic school. But while I was working there, I decided to go ahead and start my fire academy, got my state fire cert. So we'll see kind of who gets a job first, I guess kind of test trial, where if it's better to get your medic first and then maybe a department will put you through get your fire cert, or if they'll hire you on as a EMT with your fire cert first and they'll put you through medic school. I guess we'll just kind of see which is the better route to take. We'll see kind of how it goes here in the next couple months. I got a few applications in around the area, as well as Boyd. But
Well, I know, because that's something I harp on you guys on all the time, is you got to pick the organization you want to go to, because the various cities around us, some of them only hire paramedics, some of them don't care, some of them don't care what the certs are, and it's just one of those things that you kind of got to pick the organization that you want to go to. Do you want to be heavy medical based? Do you want to be more fire based? Do you want to just strictly do EMT work? And that's where the choice of the organization that you go to is critical. Now, all of that said, it's pretty safe to say that the vast majority of Texas is primarily hiring paramedic and firefighters, but there's lots and lots of people that are getting hired without that medic.
yeah, but the desire to have that medic patch on that applicant is way high. That there's a shortage of those guys out there, guys and gals, paramedics. That's a process that's been 10 years in the making, maybe 15 years in the making, of creating a program and the effort to legitimize the paramedic certification to a level of a mid-level practitioner. By doing that, they took away the ability to home grow paramedics in EMS system programs. So the EMS system lost the ability to host and teach the class, and that ability to host and teach that class only went to the universities at that point, or the colleges, and through the accreditation process. And that severely decreased the number of paramedics coming out, and you really saw it in that 10-year ago range. It's starting to catch back up. There's more programs, there's more opportunities, but 10 years ago there was hundreds of paramedic programs that just got cut instantly, and they were local. Either a fire department was hosting it, or an EMS department, and they did it in-house on their own, and they grew their own people that way, and that's not a thing anymore. So you've got to go outside to get that, or where you go work has to pay for you to go do that. And it's a difference. I would argue that it's been absolutely devastating to rural EMS. If you get into the rural, farther west, Texas, North Panhandle area, where it's just miles and miles and miles to a college, there's just not a good opportunity for people to do that anymore.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys, particularly, and this is kind of one of the reasons that I wanted you two up here today, is did our organization do enough to help prepare you for your career choice, but also, for lack of better words, just kind of open your eyes up to, what you're getting into, and the expectation of like the schools that you're attending and the interview process and just preparation across the board? Did we do a good enough job? And if not, please tell us what you think that we should also potentially look at as far as getting you guys a little more prepared. Looks like Boyd wants to try and tackle this one, so I'll give it to him first.
So, with getting on here, and like the question you're asking, I definitely, from a standpoint of, because for this department, we stay pretty busy. So, with getting on, you can kind of figure out if you want a busy department, slower department, and then we have the wide variety of just all kinds of different crazy calls, and you can figure out if you want to do fire more or EMS more. And then just from the standpoint of the training wise, with us being lucky to have a bunch of actual instructors on the department already, they can kind of give us insight of what to expect, from, actual departments, how it works. For the most part, I'd say, it helps you depend or kind of show you what department you want to go to, if you want a slow, fast department, or that's pretty much my go on it.
Did we do enough to train you to make your transition into Isaac, like you've done the TCFP testing? Was our training enough to make that segue of doing strictly volunteer training, volunteer background? You've done some state schools, you've done some area schools, you've done some outside training, but the bedrock of your training is from within our organization. Was that enough to prepare you for the state exams and make that transition easy, hard? What was it?
100%. I really believe it helped me out quite a bit. I was way above the other people in my class. The only thing I was just kind of brushing up on was proper terms for certain things rather than local slang in the area. But other than that, there was a couple things I picked up. Other than that, I already knew. But for almost everything, I already had everything, prior knowledge, and had my hands on it and everything, where as my other classmates were kind of learning what I've already known for several years at this point.
Yeah, I know for a fact, obviously terminology is going to be a big one, but another one for us is going to be hazmat. We're not a big hazmat department. Our hazmat practices is, the traditional use blue canaries and binoculars.
Rule of thumb.
Yeah, the rule of thumb. And outside of that, I have no problem admitting that outside of very basic hazmat awareness, we don't really truly even try and tackle anything with hazmat.
And don't want to. Will if we have to kind of deal. And there's folks that can definitely step in and help with that stuff.
Right. And so it's kind of the same question to you, Boyd, is did we help you prepare for going into, in your case, you're obviously more on the medical side right now. You haven't done your TCFP certs or anything, but have we been able to adequately prepare and educate you for the EMT and then going into the paramedic?
For the EMT wise, I would definitely agree with that this department helped because, we are a BLS department, so capabilities for teaching wise and all that really only goes up to just BLS level. But for that portion mainly, Everyone around here is, we do trainings, CEs, so you definitely get that. And then the fact that we actually do have quite a few intermediates and paramedics on this department that'll truly sit down with you and help you in any questions that you got. So for the most part, yeah. And then running medicals, but that's a small portion of it, is just running medicals over the big just learning curve.
Well, you learn the smell of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
That's an important piece, that you learn what it smells like to go on a medical call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can't smell those through the textbook.
Yeah, no, you don't get that. But you've been doing a lot of clinical rotations recently for your paramedic class, and you've gotten to go to a lot of different places doing those shifts, those rotations. What have you picked up going to some of those other departments? Have you see differences in some of those places from one to the other, or?
Mainly just be the crews there. I mean, everyone kind of operates EMS the same, but of course, they have they got different protocols, different medical directors, which of course that all changes in the different areas you go. But for the most part, just, each station, not even fire department really, each station, because even in a fire department, if you have multiple stations, each one kind of has their own lingo, their own little tips and tricks, things that they prefer to do on medical calls. For the most part, really, though, I mean, going to these different places, it's just picking up on little tips and tricks for the most part.
Have they all been, good and receptive to you and helped you? And
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the things I think I've gotten lucky with, because you hear people talk about how they had bad clinical experiences and whatnot. But for me, mainly, all my clinicals have been, for the most part, outstanding, really, because all the medics I've been able to match up with are really, really well experienced, and they're actually kind of young. They're that 24 to 28 age range. So, they're all pretty cool. So,
yeah, that's good. And I never had a bad clinical experience. I've had a few rounds of them going from EMT to advanced and that.
Yeah, and you'll always run into the, kind of the people that are kind of burnt out. But for my part mainly, there wasn't really anyone that was too burnt. So
that's good.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's real good.
Well, the other part of that is one thing that gets forgotten in all of this is that people are people too. You have someone that is the, my mind just went blank, the instructor, the guy that signs the paperwork for the day, the preceptor. You catch them on a bad day.
And it's not their fault.
Right. They have stuff and things that's happening to them outside of work, or just the pressure of work, and then they show up and they've got someone with their spots still showing. Maybe it's their first ride out, and their terminology's all whatever. There's 1,000 different variables that affect it, and at the end of the day, they're still a person, and doesn't matter how professional they are. There's just certain things that push you wrong and can ultimately just make you mad, and doesn't necessarily mean that that instructor's terrible. They're just having just an absolute garbage day, and unfortunately for that student, they get wrapped up in it sometimes, and that gets forgotten because that is it. I always tell people this: if you truly want to know something, if you think you know something, try and teach it. Yeah, we'll find out how quick you actually know something, because if you can't explain it, then you probably don't know it.
That's very true.
And it does. It makes it hard, and sometimes you have people that are preceptors that just don't have the personality or disposition to be a preceptor, and it just got thrusted on them, and they sure as hell don't want to deal with it. Right. So there's that too. And the only thing I can tell anyone is, if you encounter that, is 1, you're an adult, deal with it. 2, be an adult and try and make that person's life as easy as physically possible. 3, have some self-awareness and realize that you might be over there poking an angry bear.
Yeah, know your audience.
And stop it. And if you're one of these bubbly, happy-go-lucky personalities and you've got an old bear over there, dinosaur, don't try and impress them. If you want to impress them, just do good work.
And ask questions.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, just show some competency, some humble, and show that you are there to learn. Don't ask stupid questions to just ask questions, too. That's annoying.
Yeah, no. But ask them to explain something or explain what their thought process was while they were doing whatever treatment or whatever. That's a big deal. Because those guys, most of them, even if they're old and crotchety, they like to talk about themselves, too. So that's just the way we are. But they'll jump right in and tell you what they were thinking. I want to just comment that you both did what the path that I'd said it to you before, that take care of the EMS part first, because anybody can make it through the fire part of this. The fire part's the easy part. The EMS part's the hard part. And I've seen tons and tons of young guys go to a fire academy, and some of them went to really awesome, top-of-the-line fire academies, and then got back and couldn't pass their EMT and lose their fire cert in the process because they are on refresher number 2 or whatever, trying to get through an EMT basic class, or ending up testing out at ECA level because they can't pass the EMT. You know, that's a waste of time and effort, and you guys both took care of the medical side first, which is, to me, the smarter thing to do. Even if you only take it to the basic level, you've got that's done. I don't have to worry about that part anymore. Now I can do the fire part. And I know that you both look at different things, and you have different ideas of where you see yourself ending up, as far as a department, or whether it's a busy, fire, lots of fire, not much EMS, just basic first response, or fire department with an ambulance in the bay that's a EMS department with fire capabilities. That's my joke. I know you've got different places you want to be from each other. Let's hear what your dream department is. Just kind of, give me the attributes of your dream department, Isaac.
I would say I wouldn't like to be in the deep city. I'd like to be kind of one of more the, not really small departments, but one of the more smaller departments in the Metroplex, but more on kind of the outside, where you get a lot of rural, maybe some grass fires, bad accidents, but you get the whole you get kind of a good experience on both sides of the spectrum. You could get some mutual aid deep in the city if they request you, or you can get some far out and maybe a county or 2 away, just depending on what the incident is. But I'd kind of like a mix of kind of both. I'm kind of in the sweet spot of kind of figuring out kind of more what I'd want to do, what area. But I think that's kind of what I'd more like, is a little range of everything.
All right, you, Boyd, what's your ideal dream department?
For the most part, with me, kind of like he was saying, I mean, I do enjoy good grass fires, and, just kind of being on that little ways from the hospital. You got to actually do some critical thinking on your EMS calls. But for the most part, I kind of like more of the big city style of fire departments, and kind of what I want to transition into. And, I'm pretty young to be thinking about this, but I kind of like being in charge at scenes and getting to look over the whole operation as a whole and help out. My kind of goal is to just be a big battalion chief, and honestly just a fire instructor at academy, both of them at a big Metroplex department. It's kind of what I aspire to try to reach, which it's a ladder to climb, but I mean, there's definitely room to climb in a big city department like that.
And that's something that you should have picked up on. And both of you guys were junior cadets. Both of you grew up in this department with family and a long history of being around here. And you should have picked up on the fact that it is always a process and it's a growth, and it doesn't happen instantly, and it's not you don't snap your fingers one day and you're a lieutenant, and then the next week you're a captain, and you just keep going up. It takes time and years and dedication and hard work. And what I've seen from the both of you is you do have the dedication and put in the work for that side of it. So that's a big plus that you've got working your way, and realize that battalion chief's position is 20 years from now. It's not next year, and it's not 5 years from now, and it's not 10 years from now. It's in that 20 plus year range to get to that. Now, that instructor job, that can happen a little quicker. That may be 10 years down the road where you start doing that, but that's also working up to that and working up through the levels of that, because even the junior instructors that I have here that are my training lieutenants underneath me, that they're building on that. They're trying to get their feet wet and become better teachers and better instructors. And it's not because they don't know their material or anything like that. They've got to come into their own and develop their way they do it. Yeah,
there's a colossal amount of skills into being an instructor. One of the better examples I can use of this is, in a volunteer department's really good example of this. If you're on the career side, you have a very specific group of people that are going to that class and taking that class. They're going to, don't get me wrong, they're all their own special snowflake, but they're going to have the same dispositions, same personalities, same mindsets, and generally they're all going to have kind of the sameness to them. So you're going to be able to tailor that class to the same type of person year after year after year. On the volunteer side, you don't have that. You have a wide variety of people that join your organization, and whether it's for EMS or fire or both, men and women, they learn differently. I've taught a lot of classes with men and women, and they learn stuff completely different. And when you have to start interacting with different personalities, different backgrounds, different education levels, different life experiences, let's just say that class is 20 people and the age range in there 60 years, then the way you're going to teach that and the way you're going to teach a 17-year-old kid versus a 77-year-old man or woman, that's not the same. And it is hard to teach that material once to the class so everyone understands it. Because if you end up having to go back and teach it 20 different ways, that you'll just go insane. And that's there's no class on the planet that's ever going to prepare you for that. You're going to just have to, that's a life skills, life experience thing. Boyd's about to bust up. What? You're laughing. Go ahead.
No, I let one rip pretty hard. It's pretty rank over here.
Excellent.
Good.
And we're in a closed room.
Yeah.
It'll be perfect.
That's staying in the podcast.
Enjoy that, Isaac. But yeah, back to the instructor thing. It's one of those things that if you're even remotely interested in going that route, you need to become involved in training now, and you need to start working on that, because there's no textbook on the face of the earth that's going to teach you how to be a good instructor. That is a hands-on, practical application. Start doing it, because if you're not, you're never going to be able to. It's not that you won't be a good teacher. You're going to have to do it just the way it is, because you don't want. Here's the one pro tip. You don't want to be the person that stands there with their back to the class and reads a slide.
No.
That's not an instructor.
Yeah, that is not what you're there for.
Yeah, that's not an instructor. It's like a stand-up comedian more than it is anything else. You've got to develop that repertoire. That's the word of the day. The repertoire, to have all those things in your back of your mind, so that when it comes up, you can explain it differently. You can shift the conversation. You can do all those things that you don't get control of that class by not understanding people and how to make them learn. That's where it all comes together. You can know the material and be a terrible instructor.
I would even tie it into starting this stuff early and building the ability early to understand how to do instruction. That's going to bring you into public speaking. That's going to bring you into being able to speak in front of people easily. It's going to make your interview process 10 times easier. So instead of sitting there showing up to your interview kind of like a nervous wreck, and it looks like you just killed a bus full of orphans before you went into your interview because you're pale, you're sweating, you're gripping the table,
Mom spaghetti.
Diaphoretic.
You're absolutely losing it, and you got to realize that the people sitting across from you see this, and it's not that they're not understanding of the fact that you're nervous, and realistically, it's probably the first time you've ever had an interview. But one thing I try and always tell like you young guys to consider is that in your career, in the long time of your career, the people you work with, you'll have a closer relationship and spend more time with them than you will with your own families. In the long run, you will. And it's part of the interview process is they're trying to hire someone that they can actually stand. Because if you can be the world's smartest person, brilliant, most physically adept individual for the job, but if you're coming across as an absolute stone, no personality, no ability to interact, I would argue that's more of a detriment to your ability to get hired than the fact that you may have answered that HR question a little questionably.
For sure. That goes a long way. And I've sat on interview boards and done a whole bunch of that, even interviewed chiefs and the like. And that's one of those things. You got to get that warm fuzzy about that person that you're fixing to put in that position. It's truly a warm fuzzy. And if you don't get the warm fuzzy and you're just looking at what's on that piece of paper and all these certifications and qualifications that somebody has, you literally might hire the axe murderer, and you don't know until the end.
I literally saw it firsthand when I tested for one of the big civil service departments in the Metroplex. Made it all the way to the final interview, but you just kind of just really get a good grasp of what it's kind of like to be in a big panel interview and how they'll hire other people that have a good personality but maybe don't have as many certs as other people. But personality does have a big partake in some of these jobs, and a lot of them have these big sections on their tests of just straight personality questions. I mean, it's pretty important nowadays.
And it's to kind of round back to what Boyd was talking about, getting involved early in training. If that's something you're wanting to do, then you've got to get involved in it, because you want to. This is the place to build the skills right now. You want to screw up here. This is where you want to do all that learning on how to actually effectively communicate, so that when you are trying to have that interaction at your career department or organization, whatever it is, and you're sitting down having that random conversation on some Sunday night, and you're talking in depth about something, and you're being exceedingly clear about the thing you're talking about, it translates immediately. People are going to see it and be like, oh, yeah, they're ready for that.
And that's one of those underrated skills that I picked up a lot of my ability to public speak and all that, even as far back as junior high, because I was in speech and UIL impromptu speaking. I
And so
did
it
that
begins.
for several years. Is that the rain?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. We need
Referencing a
that.
Lord of the Rings scene.
Yeah,
It's underrated.
We need that. But doing UIL impromptu speaking and some of those public speaking competitions, as a kid and a high school age student, taking speech and some of those classes it helped me a lot in life in general, just being able to talk to people, because it's no different than selling an item or being in a store and being a store clerk. You've got to create a connection with somebody, and you're in that interview board, and you've got to create a connection across the table with the people that are interviewing you, and it has to be a sincere, solid connection, and you've got a limited amount of time to do that. The circumstances are stacked against you to do that, but you've got to make that happen. And if you don't develop those skills and those early on in life, you're gonna battle that for a long time.
Yeah, and Isaac, you had talked about having at least one interview where you got your teeth kind of kicked in on it. And again, it's just chalk it up to experience. You're a young man. It's probably the first true professional interview you'd ever been at. And it's that classic, there you are with your head on the chopping block in front of a whole bunch of wise old men in robes, and you can't see their face, and they all talk funny, and, there's smoke in the room, and, there's a sacrificed animal on the side, and you're not sure really what the hell's going on here. So shockingly, you're nervous, you're uptight, and again, you're literally a stone over there. Have you had another interview since then?
Not for fire department. EMS,
Okay.
I've had another 2 since then.
So it's kind of hard to compare, but did the interviews following that one go easier, better, smoother, anything?
I would say for that busy EMS department when I started after that, I'd say helped out. I was a lot more relaxed. I wasn't really too worried about the panel versus the big fire department one, but definitely helped me kind of chill my nerves a little bit and just kind of relax.
Right. Boyd, have you had any interviews to that level yet? I know your education path hasn't really taken you that way yet.
Yeah. When I really think about it, not really. No, just with, like you said, my education path, it's just been so busy, it hasn't really granted the time for truly a whole process of going on to a fire department.
Now, in going forward, for anyone that's possibly younger and listening to this, let's say you have that dream department that you really want to go to. And again, you need to understand that the interview is a make or break moment. And if that's your first interview that you've ever done, do not practice in that interview. You go find somewhere else to apply and go take some interview prep somewhere else. One place you can do this is through a college. They'll have basically hiring symposiums or companies that'll come in and talk about their company. And it's not that they're necessarily recruiting people. It's just that they are trying to get people aware of the industry. And what you can do is you can go in there and physically talk to those people. I don't care if you have a single iota about what the hell's going on with that company. Just go in there and talk to them, because it gets you in the perspective of talking to someone that's an expert and you don't know them, and have them start giving you, and it's basically preparation for those interviews. Now, if you don't have that opportunity, start applying at other departments, even if that's not the department you want to get hired at. Don't care. Once you go in, you start interviewing with them, you go through their process, you may find that you really like that organization, okay? And now you've broadened your horizons that way. 2, more importantly, you're just getting the experience, because I have seen, not on the fireside. I've never interviewed on the fireside, never will. Well, actually, I just lied about that.
Yeah.
Technically, I did. We make that another podcast, though. But I've done a lot of other very professional interviews, and I've had the full gamut. Big corporate interviews, very small, personal, easygoing interviews. I've had interviews, particularly as a young man, that were complete disasters, and I've had other interviews that were fantastic. And it chalks down to just the experience with the interviews and knowing how to handle some of those weird interview questions.
Yeah, and the other way to do a little prep would also be to sit on our interview board here and do some of those interviews. And I'm not saying you two need to be the only ones on that interview board, but you could rotate in there and be a part of that and pick up on some of that, or go do a speed dating deal.
I mean, that's the great thing about this department. You get a wide spectrum of everything. We have people with, I guess, no career experience in fire departments, and then you have others that they're active battalion chiefs at a big city department, and they'll give you tips and tricks on their department, or maybe refer you to another department that you'd maybe want to apply to, or just kind of what they know about maybe a department you want to go to. And also just learning maybe command structure. Sometimes you don't have that many people in your truck and it's just you take the ball, and you kind of learn how to run command a little better and kind of get your confidence skills up and just learn your system. It's a pretty big perk of this department.
I liked the speed dating idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate idea. If it does nothing else for you, it allows you to conversate with people that you know nothing about. And it is a job interview.
Right. And like you said, kind of with the speed dating idea, you're trying to sell yourself to that person.
Yeah, no,
Same thing as an interview.
It's true. You are the goods that are being sold at that point, and you realize that, and I am inadvertently a pretty fair salesman. I'm going to just put fair as my deal. I might could get the white gloves to the lady with the ketchup popsicle, but I might not. But I know the rattlesnake's getting tennis shoes. But that's something that took years for me to become confident enough and have that ability. And it started back from that junior high doing the impromptu speaking. You don't have 10 or 15 years to develop those skills, so you've got to work on that even harder right now than you would otherwise. So
probably a real easy reference example of this is there's a term I use called legacy chiefs. And, there's very, very popular fire chiefs, battalion chiefs, captains that are known across the U.S. What is their personality? They're not cold, stoic, reserved, quiet individuals. They're boisterous, not necessarily loud, well-spoken, clear, even, good stories, and just for a lack of better words, they flow really well. Now, it's compounded by the fact that they're incredibly skilled, they're incredibly experienced, and they have the expertise and life skills to back up this, and I'm going to call it a persona, because it is. If you're at that level, there's a little bit of a personality built into that. And, I mean, if that's, again, if that's the level that you're shooting for, then I hate to say it this way, but not mimic them, but you need to study that individual and be understanding of that individual. And there's a reason that they present the information that they have the way they present it. It's not just a complete, they built it over time and that's how the dice rolled. There's a very specific reason that personality is built the way it is. And it's not that it's a sociopath thing. It's not that, but it's just how they've built that character and that personality.
And it's deliberate.
Yeah.
Right.
Very deliberate.
Yeah.
It's you walk into a room with people and you can command the presence of the whole room. You can do that. It goes back into the same things with the instructor part of it that we were talking about earlier. Those people that are that guy, that legacy chief, they're phenomenal instructors because as soon as they open their mouth, people are paying attention.
Well, that's the common theme between all of them. That's all of them. Every single one of them. That's their background. True background. That's their true background. Is the training
Education.
background.
Yeah.
They started instructing the second that they were the student in the fire academy. What do I mean by that? They absorbed everything. And thought about it, and then actually took the classroom stuff and then applied it in the real world, and then learned their lessons off of the real world application of it, and then shared it. And then, again, it goes back to that effective communication part. They actually understand what they're talking about. The personality disposition is there, so when they're trying to explain this stuff, it just makes sense.
Gets misconstrued as arrogance sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's not arrogance. Realize that confidence and arrogance are two different things. They're opposite ends of the spectrum. There's a lot of arrogant people that are incompetent, and they may have confidence. So you gotta figure that out. There's tons of people that think they're great. Maybe me, I don't know, but that think they're something special or are good at something, and reality is we may not be great at it at all. So weigh that into what you're thinking. So what's your next steps, Boyd? What are you trying to do next?
Well, once I plan on finishing my paramedicine degree, I was planning on, and this is kind of a fragile time because graduating with your paramedic opens up so many opportunities in the fact that people come to you to ask to go to their department. So you have this huge, just broad open spectrum of all these different departments coming to you, and they'll hire you as a paramedic without your fire cert, and then put you through fire school. Because if you can get through your paramedic, fire academy is a walk in the park. So it kind of gets into this fragile time frame where, like we were saying earlier, I have a specific dream department that Boyd wants to go to in the Metroplex, and they're opening up the month after I graduate, so I'm planning on trying to shoot for them. And if that doesn't work this go round, I think I might just roll into fire school and honestly just test for some of the departments in the surrounding Metroplex that mimic the one department that I want to go to. So,
have you given much thought to taking a job, an EMS only job, and developing some experience and some skills and having a track record with that paramedic, not just a piece of paper?
Absolutely, yeah. Being a paramedic, like I said, it already makes you, really valuable. But just another thing to put another gold star on there is, like you were saying, experience with, especially going to, a really busy EMS system for a year or two, and just to rack up that experience.
So I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna be somewhat crushing to both you guys, and I hope you realize when I say this, it's not mean or malicious or anything like that, but you need to look at it from the standpoint that paramedic school, fire academy, all these things, all that did was prepare you to learn to be the paramedic or the firefighter.
Right.
It's a piece of paper that says you can do that job, but until you get to that job and you put some time in the streets doing that and working at that level, you still aren't that. You're still not a paramedic that
Right.
that
Yeah.
does the job, that
Yeah.
that has the true value. Now there's a lot of value in you making it through that class for sure, because that, like we talked about earlier, it's a commodity now, and you are a commodity, being that potential paramedic, and you've got to, I would say, hedge your bet and put some experience with that. That would be my advice to you going forward. And even if that experience is a part-time job somewhere that you do while you're completing the other tasks in the fire academy and doing the other things to get to that end goal, just the part-time experience of that is worth its weight in gold, because it shows that you're not just book smart. And then you've got some references. You need references. You literally have us for references, and that's all you've got at this moment.
Yeah, and just a little quick example, you know, you learn in school, for example, their O2 needs, like for expectations, needs to be 94 or above. And classic example, you go to someone's house and their COPD, and their normal is 89. And just from that experience of not really ever running it, you start freaking out. I need to start giving them oxygen. I need to make interventions. And, you know, the paramedic beside you is like, slow down just a minute. Just kind of look at the room. You look around, patient's sitting there just fine. He's calling just because he's having a little bit of trouble because of his allergies. It kind of like you're saying, it's just getting that experience, which, I mean,
that's in EMS world, that 10-foot assessment, my mind is just went blank. But that impression, that initial impression, that's part of your assessment.
It's a big one.
That initial impression is huge, and you can't make that initial impression without some experience to back it up, because everything you know up until that point's analytical. It's this plus this equals C, and you don't have the ability to develop an initial impression.
That C can make a U or a...
Right. Yeah, you can't. There's no possible way for you to develop that without experience on the truck. So what's your next steps?
My next steps, I'm just kind of seeing kind of how my applications play out. I got a possible interview coming up with one of the outer lying departments in the Metroplex. Probably about to turn in another one to a more rural department, and just kind of seeing which one sticks. And then other than that, just continue my experience at one of the more rural EMS departments, getting a good spectrum of all that, and getting experience while also trying to get my foot in the door on the fire side, and just seeing who picks up. And if nothing really happens within a certain time frame, then I could probably just go paramedic school once I've gotten my basic skills done pretty well. But that's kind of more my approach, is I'd rather be a pretty good EMT and have a good grasp of what it is to be a basic, and kind of leap into paramedic after that, so I kind of know what it means to be a basic versus a paramedic, and kind of know the boundaries of each cert.
Yeah, and that's something that Boyd probably lost in that path, is that the realization that those basic skills that you learn as a basic is truly the foundation.
Yeah. And that's where you start to get building, like you're saying, your general impression, which is a huge, huge one.
Yeah. That stuff's so important, and it gets skipped a lot. I see it all the time in guys that don't go work at all until they get that they're on that path. And just having some basic life experience and some working experience and
I'll say it. They're terrible for the first 6 months.
yeah, no,
They're garbage paramedics.
Yeah.
They're dangerous. I don't have a problem saying it. Doesn't mean that they're bad people.
no, they
Just means that they need a solid EMT to sit there and slap them upside the head sometimes and be like, look.
You're standing on the oxygen tubing.
Yeah.
Move. And that it's true, and it happens all the time.
Oh, I'll agree. As soon as literally I finished my EMT, I pretty much noticed I still really have no kind of idea what it is to have good patient assessment and just kind of talking to your patients. Whereas to now, after having all my experience in, I can multitask while talking to them and take mental notes. And
Well, it's a comfortable factor. And again, it goes just like we were talking about being the instructor part. You just got to do it. It's the same thing. Paramedic. Just because you finally got hired to go be a paramedic doesn't mean that you've had a single hands-on a patient. COVID, that happened. Yeah, that was a brilliant idea. 2 years of sending paramedics out that never once had a same thing. Did their EMT, no hands-on patients, went straight into the paramedic program, no hands-on patients, and then got hired. Yeah.
Here you go. Good luck.
I can tell you all about that. I've seen that. That was glorious. Now, again, did that make the person terrible? No, it didn't. It just meant that you had to watch them like a hawk, and until they could actually get their teeth cut up and get them sharp, well, then after that, they were fine. But boy, those first couple of weeks and months were an absolute wild event. And like I said, I saw that locally.
I would add that patient assessment into that interview prep too, because that you're interviewing for the job of taking care of said patient. That's what you're doing in the first 30 seconds of that interaction. And I've seen that go horrendously bad because for whatever reason that patient had zero trust, zero for whatever actions that EMT or paramedic took in that first 30 seconds, just turn that patient off. Yep. And you shouldn't get that skill set. I mean, you've got to build to that. That's not something that instantly happens. And it's hard to train for some of that stuff.
Sure.
It really is.
yeah, from what I've heard, usually it's whichever person on the ambulance makes first contact, usually that's who the patient listens to kind of more so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because one, you're coming in as a position of authority and realize that even as a firefighter or whatever, you're coming into this event of chaos, let's call it, whatever it is. You're coming into this event of chaos as a position of authority, and people are looking to you for answers. You're the answer guy. And whether you've got them or not, you can't let them think you don't have them. Does that mean that you just irrationally do stupid stuff? Absolutely not. But you figure out how to get a plan, how to find somebody that has a plan, whatever the answer is. But you can't sow the seed of doubt, because once you sow that seed of doubt in that patient, boy, it's a tough road. It's a tough road to hoe. It really is. I've seen it. I've seen it with young guys, particularly, and young gals that are in that y'all's age bracket, coming into especially the new paramedics coming into it, and they get 5 or 6 FTO shifts, and then get cut off on a box by themselves and end up 40 miles from their nearest help, and they sow some doubt in that patient, and then next thing you know, some guy like me is driving 40 miles to go be the supervisor that makes it all better, and all I'm doing is just reinstilling the faith in that person, in that paramedic, because I'm not any better than they are in the general sense of it. I'm just there to sell the patient on their skills.
I mean, yeah, hope can go a long way in these patients. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. They don't have very good people skills. Patient doesn't really trust them anymore. But other critical times where you keep reassuring the patient, they keep their hopes up, and usually everything kind of just runs better from there. And it helps you kind of concentrate better. Just doesn't make you panic as much. But
so that's my major takeaway from this conversation thus far, is that, and hopefully one of yours is the people skill side of this, and that confidence and all that stuff that goes along with it. And as you go into those interviews, that's the part that's going to carry you through 90% of it. Matt, what do you got on that?
Well, it's a common theme. We're people, they're people. Shockingly, it deals with how you handle people. And that's kind of a no-brainer when I say it that way. But again, it's that life skill thing where you're young men. You have not particularly, this is a unique take on it with your particular generation, and the way you interact with other young people your age is not the way that a 70-year-old interacts. And that's oddly enough becoming a problem. You're starting to see that where you have the tech, I'll call it a technology barrier.
Oh, yeah.
And what you have is that you have people that don't even realize that they're making references to things, and this is real common. You make a reference to something you're familiar with. Well, how's an 80-year-old woman familiar with the reference that you just made to technology? They're not, but they make the reference all the time, and I see it all the time. And the person's already confused or aggravated or frustrated or whatever. They just...
Or in distress.
Yeah, they just don't get it. And it's just one of those little itty-bitty factors that goes completely unnoticed. Did it actually have an effect? It's at the most negligible. But it's just one of those ways of the complete inability to make it relatable. And it's simple by just simply being a person and being able to handle the situation as a person, and having that personality goes a long ways. And that's whether in patient care or interviews, or your conduct at the station. It really does. Some basic fundamental things, I think, get forgotten to be emphasized. Maybe that's just the fact that we're older and more mature now than we were when we were their age, and just more life experience and have a better grasp and a depth chart to compare it to. But again, I do think in that case, I'll make that argument that today's technology and the way young men and women interact is completely different than we interacted when I was their age and versus when you were their age.
Oh, when I was their age, I was a worthless human being. I mean, I was terrible. I'll just throw that out there. You didn't want to be around me. It was horrible.
I've seen with, I guess it happens more kind of with the younger generation as myself. I've seen on the ambulance, you have your older patients and you're kind of treating them with something they might not be familiar with, but I guess people forget sometimes that they need to talk them through these things. And a lot of times they'll put one of those CPAP masks on their face and they start freaking out, but they forget to tell them, kind of guide them through it. And usually once you guide them through it, then it all works out. But I guess people forget to communicate, and they're just kind of used to not being as social, I guess, as the older generations. I'm not saying that's the case all the time, but I've seen that's a more common theme.
You can't send them a text and tell them you're fixing to put a CPAP on them. That doesn't work.
Well, and again, it's just the fundamental ability to connect with other people, eye contact. Simply understanding that, to get on their same level, not standing or looming over someone, body posture, hand placement. This is directly applicable to an interview. It's directly applicable to patient contact. It's directly applicable to conduct at a station. These things are all directly related to each other, even though they have, in passing, nothing to do with each other at face value. But they're a critical link. And you want an example of that? Compare it to your good high school teachers that you had, good middle school teachers. What was their body posture? What was their conduct? How did they, voice inflections? How did they handle the contact with the students? Same thing I was talking about earlier. Everyone in that class is different of each other, even though they're all the same raging idiot hormone teenagers. Okay. But that teacher was, for the most part, universally liked by the entire class. People actually paid attention in that class. Why? It was because the instructor. Same thing when you're doing with patient contact. It's the same thing. I mean, you had the right person come onto a scene, and they just apply a soothing hand and it just gets better.
Yeah.
You can go exact opposite of that too. I mean, I've seen that where fire or medical personnel start to mouth off to each other with the patient, and it's like, well, that just went bad.
Yeah.
And,
And it
it's
goes
sure as hell
downhill
not
from
going to
there.
get any better. And that's that whole grown-up thing. You know, the fact of the matter is that no matter what you think of that person's condition or pain levels or whatever they called 911 for, you're literally there to solve their problem. You're not there for an opinion on their problem. Like I said, I mean, good God, we could bring in a therapist and talk about this, and we talk 50 hours on this thing. But it does. It really comes down to just being able to build the skills for your toolbox. Probably the last thing I would add to that is don't hesitate to actually look at like some really basic psychology stuff. And I'm not saying do your best impersonation of Freud, but understand some basic psychology stuff and what is accomplished when you do achieve eye contact and what's accomplished with body posture and confidence, being able to come in and just present yourself the way you want to be presented. Classic example of this. Again, both of you are really young. Well, if you come into let's say it's a mild medical scene, but you come in fidgety, slouched, eyes looking at the floor, you're not speaking up. How the hell do you have any confidence in this needle that someone's about to stab in you? Whereas if you come in and actually present yourself as the authority, maybe wear a jacket to cover up your spots, and present yourself as the authority, it goes a lot longer ways, not only in them listening to you, but also getting them to just calm down.
Goes a long way.
You know, let's go to an exact opposite side of this. No one's a big fan of the homeless bum. Yeah, humanitarian, all of us, whatever. Treat them with humanity. Just treat them like a person. Don't treat them like garbage, like every other interaction that they have where they're treated that way. It's incredible what happens when you get to your, we'll just call them the shadows of society. You know, treat them like you would want to be treated, and you'll get a completely different reaction out of that individual, where every other ambulance crew or police or fire, you know, they end up having nothing but a fist fight with that individual the entire time, every time they're called on them. Little humanity goes a long ways with the certain outcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I would have first impressions on some of the homeless people in the Metroplex, but if you're nice to them, everything would kind of work out well. You'd get to know them a little better, or you might run them again and, you know, pick up on the same foot. But a lot of these guys, you know, you kind of judge them at first. You're like, oh, great, it's going to be another one of those calls. But a lot of times I would learn things about these patients, and you actually kind of got a good connection with them, kind of got a good insight on their past life or what got them into the step. And a lot of these people were actually pretty good people, and I actually kind of enjoyed running on some of those. But
it's also just a life preservation manner. The fact of the matter is that they are mentally unstable potentially when you're seeing them, and at least you're the nice guy, and you know the nice guy is usually not the one to get shot or stabbed.
100% in that situation.
So, I mean, just from a simple life preservation point of view, the ability to de-escalate and have the reputation as the person that's not judgmental but also de-escalates, that goes a long ways. Because like I said, at the end of the day, no one wants to deal with that. I get it. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some true all saints out there that truly live to help take care of that part of our society that's struggling. The vast majority of people out there, it's just their job. You know, they're just out there it's just another call. I want to go back to bed. And I get it. And it's not a fault. I'm not saying that's a fault. I'm just saying it's something that you can consider, particularly with both of you going into a career in this, that you're going to end up dealing with that part of society a lot more than, let's say, a banker or an accountant would.
Yeah,
Right.
let's face it. You're other than the true sick elderly that are your frequent flyers. Your other frequent flyers are generally the drug addicts, the people that are dependent on whatever they're dependent, the mentally ill, all those people that are more difficult to deal with are the people that you're going to deal with the most.
Right.
And that's part of it. That's just a piece of the puzzle that you've got to figure out. And the sooner you figure it out and you don't take it personal, because none of it's personal. Like the things that those distraught patients tell you, it's not personal. None of it's meant for you directly. It's just the reaction at the time. And don't dwell on that stuff. We're getting a little long in the tooth here.
Yeah, I'm fine. Do you guys have anything else that you would like to add or close with, or just consider as advice to someone else that might be listening to this? And let's say they're a sophomore or junior in high school, and maybe they don't have an EMT program in their school, or they do, either or. What would be your recommendation to that young man or woman, Boyd?
For the most part, I mean, is just going and getting your EMT first before you're getting your fire cert. And then joining a volunteer department if you're able to is another big one, because that kind of starts to lead you in the direction of what you like, what you don't like, and pretty much just go forth and conquer. Just keep your head up and keep pushing through it, because, I mean, it's not easy getting up to where you want to be, but you just got to keep going for it.
Well, and nothing in life that's worth doing is easy.
Right.
Period.
I agree with that.
It doesn't exist.
Right, and if you want to do it, it's not hard.
Yep.
And I'll add in, there are kind of online courses for like your medical or fire. Kind of find out what's best for you, best for your work schedule, how you learn better, if you learn better online, or if you need to be hands-on, like a 3-month fire academy versus an online course where you do everything online and you just do your skills all at once. And then as well as your, like for your medical cert, if you're taking like your national, if you don't pass the first time, it's not the end of the world. There are retests, and just stay focused. Don't kind of lose hope on yourself just because you failed the first time, or you might ace it the second time. There's always second chances.
Yeah, I know I finished EMT school and then shot into paramedic school right after, immediately. I would suggest to people, like we were saying earlier several times, get the life experience, start working EMS somewhere, just working that up until you want to. And another big thing is realizing if you want to do it, because there's some days where, it's not just falls and lift assist all day. I mean, you get cardiac arrest, entrapments. It's days where you just have terrible after terrible after terrible, and it takes a toll on you. And that's kind of those points where you realize if you really want to do it or not.
Well, the bad calls come in threes.
Yeah.
They absolutely do.
Yep.
So.
Agree with that.
We could have a whole discussion on that. It's worth. I'm going to just throw it in there for a second. If you're young and in a department and you stumble into just a true crap call and it's bothered you, you have got to talk to someone. Yep. You have got to talk to someone. That's something that we highly encourage here in our department. We have a pretty open policy about just talking about whatever, and I don't really care how graphic it is or how wild it gets. Just vent there at the station and get it out there at the station, and you'll find that other people will talk about it. Now, kind of segue back into this, career advice for young people. So you want to become firefighter, cop, medic, whatever. There's a very specific trajectory that you have to stay on with this. First one is you need a pretty clean record. You can't have a pretty wild background. Now, not saying that you weren't a kid and you screwed up. So let's fast forward to let's say you're 30 years old and you finally grew up, okay, and you want to make a career out of this. Here's what I really recommend you do. Go find a volunteer fire department and talk to them let's say you don't want to go that route and you want to go straight to a career, what I really recommend you do is swing in there and try and talk to an officer on shift, not one of the firefighters. It's not that they're not good to talk to, but you want to actually talk to an officer and just tell them, hey, I'm looking to make a career out of this, but I have X, Y, and Z on my background. And I am telling you, do not hold back. Okay. Now, I hate to tell you this, but if you've got a pretty extensive criminal history of murder and on, yeah, you're not going to get hired. You need to find something else to get into. But if you've got some drug background, drug usage, you can explain that. Okay, you can explain it. Do not hide it. It will come out. You're going to get burned alive in an interview if you sit there and try and hide it. You're going to be 10 times better off explaining, you're an idiot kid. You grew up, been clean for X amount of time. You can work past that. That's perfectly fine. Back to the young man or woman. Yeah, you need to, it's typically already going to be kind of self-correcting. I'll say you're already a little miniature humanitarian at that point, and humanitarians don't necessarily live the most exotic party-filled lives, but they may get caught with like an MIP or, got slapped on the wrist with a small drug charge. They were in the park smoking weed and got hit. That's not going to be a career ender. You need to be honest about it, though. Don't try and hide that crap because it's going to get pulled out pretty quick. Those interview boards are pretty exacting, and they're able to get people to collapse on that. But it's a pretty clean background, and you need to associate with people that are in that background. That's going to be your easiest path forward. So if you're wanting to be a cop, you need to figure out how to be involved as a young person with a cops program. Same for fire, same for EMS. Fire and EMS, particularly fire, is a lot easier because there's a lot of juniors programs out there. Most departments are pretty open to someone that's 16, 17, 18 years old. Once you get below 16, you're getting pretty hard pressed to actually get, at least our organization, I'll say our organization, because we're just too busy, and frankly, there's too many wild calls here, and I'm not going to have a kid that's really 16 or younger on some of these calls that we occasionally get toned to. I would argue it's almost too young for an 18-year-old sometimes.
Sometimes. I want to also tell you that, believe it or not, this interaction was probably great for you guys as far as interview prep, and because you truly don't know what we're going to come up with in the course of this conversation, because we don't know what we're going to come up with in the course of this conversation. We've never been scripted. That's not who we are. This is all honest, true conversation, and you guys handled it well and did good and didn't sound like complete morons, so kudos to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, number one thing to note for applications, interviews, is honesty. Honesty is probably the biggest trait that you need to have with these interviews and hiring processes.
Because if you're not, it's going to taste like burning.
They will find out.
Well, and I don't know if anybody's ever told you, but if you lie, you have to remember the lie forever. If you tell the truth, you already know what happened.
Yep.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
You don't have to remember what to say because it's the truth. And that is 100% right all the time. I just in anything in life, honesty gets you there. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Works for me. I think I'm going to go see if I can find a pumpkin pie this time and see how far back I can go.
Yeah, pumpkin, that probably gets you into, World War II-ish. I think you got to go buttermilk to get, Wild West 1800s.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see just what exactly had happened. Well, guys, we appreciate your time, energy, and effort on listening this far. This was a little bit of a longer one. Hopefully it was beneficial to everyone. And as per usual, questions, concerns, comments, theories, conjectures, or anything else radical that you have a significant problem with what we stated, you can always email us at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. Past that, this is Matt.
This is Jesse.
I'm Boyd.
I'm Isaac.
And we are out. Have a good evening.